Welcome to the AeroExploration Podcast, where aviation's past, present, and future meet. We explore the stories that build aviation history, take you inside the industry today, and uncover the career paths and innovations keeping the industry in motion. We go behind the scenes, into the cockpit, and onto the ramp, meeting the people and discovering the places that define aviation. If it's part of the flying world, you'll find it here. This is AeroExploration.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the AeroExploration Podcast. My name is Jim, and I'm your host. On this episode, I'm going to be chatting with a genuine U-2 pilot. We're going to talk all about that fancy, high-flying surveillance aircraft the Air Force continues to have in its inventory, but I believe they're starting to phase them out. But we caught up with Gogo, who is the pilot who flew the U-2 into AirVenture this year. So stick around for that episode in just a few minutes. Not a ton of updates or intro side information before we get into the interview. For you, it's been a week since my last episode. For me, it's been about 10 minutes. So I don't have anything new to contribute that I didn't talk about on the last episode. As I mentioned on that episode, I'm recording a few of these in a row so that when I am getting ready for my check ride, I don't have to be bogged down with not only the podcast, but check ride stuff. I want to focus solely on the check ride. Here's what I can tell you, though. During all this flight training, I got to a point where I put a pause on the YouTube channel. Once the check ride is complete, I'm planning on getting back into that. I do still have a lot of stuff that's already recorded. I just don't have the time to edit it right now with all the prep for this check ride. So for those of you who follow me on YouTube, fear not, the videos are coming back. I just need the time to get back in a space where I can do that. As for the podcast, I do have a number of guests that are lined up. I will start doing some interviews again sometime mid to late December so that I can start bringing guests back on. Some of them have some really great stories to tell. So I'm excited to get back into that space as well, in addition to just being done with this rating and being able to actually use it. So I'll talk a bit about that in more of a deep dive once the check ride is complete. I'll talk about my prep for this check ride, general check ride, thoughts and guidance, and then we'll maybe deep dive this specific check ride just a little bit for those of you who are aspiring to be CFIs. Okay, so for those of you who do follow the YouTube channel, some of this might sound a little familiar. What we're going to do to set this up is I did a video about the U-2 on the YouTube channel. So I'm going to play that audio clip in advance of my interview with Gogo. So you'll be able to hear about the history of the U-2, some interesting aspects of the aircraft, and then we'll hear from Gogo all about flying this incredible aircraft. Flight at 70,000 feet, more than 13 miles above the Earth. Below you, the world is silent. Above you, the familiar blue has bled away into the blackness of space. You are a member of one of the most exclusive clubs on the planet. But up here, in this beautiful but lethal environment, there is zero room for error. A tiny mistake, a shift of just a few knots in airspeed, could rip your aircraft apart and send you into a stall that you can't recover from. This isn't some what-if scenario. This is the day-to-day reality of a U-2 pilot. And just one of the reasons why this plane is arguably one of the most demanding and difficult aircraft to fly in the entire U.S. Air Force. Welcome back to AeroExploration, and today we're going to talk about the U-2 reconnaissance plane, also called the Dragon Lady. We're going to talk about the aircraft itself, its mission, and along the way we're going to talk to one of its pilots, Gogo, who is a member of that exclusive club of aviators who has been able to fly this remarkable aircraft. So let's dive right in and learn a little bit more about the U-2. So they call her the Dragon Lady, a name that she has earned for her unforgiving and temperamental nature. For over 7 decades, the Lockheed U-2 has been the face of high-altitude reconnaissance, a shadowy icon of the Cold War that's still on the front lines of intelligence gathering today. First flown way back in 1955, it has outlasted countless would-be successors, a testament to its brilliant yet deeply challenging design. But while its mission is to see everything from the edge of space, the real story is about the handful of pilots who have ever qualified to fly it. So what is it that makes this Cold War legend so notoriously tough to fly? The answer isn't just one simple thing. It's a symphony of extreme engineering and punishing physics that makes every single flight a battle against the sky itself. So to really understand the Dragon Lady, you have to go way back to her birth. In the mid-1950s, the Cold War was a war of shadows, and America was basically flying blind. The Soviet Union, tucked behind the Iron Curtain, was totally a black hole of information. President Eisenhower needed eyes in the sky, a way to find out what was really going on with Soviet bombers and missiles. The answer came from Lockheed's legendary Skunk Works, the top-secret design group run by genius Clarence Kelly Johnson. The requirements for the time were staggering. Build a plane that could fly at 70,000 feet, an altitude everyone thought was impossible for Soviet fighters and missiles to reach. To pull this off, Johnson's team created something truly radical. It wasn't a jet in the way that we think. It was more of a jet-powered glider. It had these enormous, high-lift wings spanning over 100 feet, bolted to a skinny, lightweight frame. Everything about its design was for one thing and one thing only: altitude. Weight was shaved off everywhere. The wings were so long and light they couldn't even hold up traditional landing gear. Instead, the U-2 uses a bicycle-style setup with the two main landing gear on the fuselage. And on the wings are little detachable wheels called pogos that come off during takeoff. So the result is an aircraft that could soar into the stratosphere, an engineering marvel that first took to the skies from the mysterious Groom Lake facility in Nevada, which you probably have heard of as Area 51. Its existence was one of the nation's most closely guarded secrets. For years, the U-2 flew untouched, bringing back priceless intel that literally reshaped American foreign policy. But that invincibility was shattered on May 1st of 1960 when CIA pilot Francis Gary Powers was shot down over the Soviet Union by a surface-to-air missile. The incident sparked an international crisis and instantly cemented the U-2's legendary status. It was also a brutal reminder of the immense risk that these pilots took on with every single mission. Alright, flying the U-2 is no joke. It's not just a job. It is a physical and mental marathon that starts long before takeoff and ends with one of the trickiest landings in all of aviation. The difficulties really boil down to three things: the brutal flight environment, intense human factors, an unforgiving challenge of just getting the plane back onto the ground. Alright, so let's talk about the first challenge. The first and most famous challenge of flying at altitude is what's called the coffin's corner. The U-2 is operating where the laws of aerodynamics are just at a razor's edge. As the plane climbs, air gets thinner and thinner as you reach different altitudes. So to generate enough lift, it has to fly faster. So its stall speed, the slowest you can go before you fall out of the sky, keeps creeping up and up and up as they gain more altitude. At the same time, the speed of sound gets slower as the air gets colder. So every plane also has a maximum never exceed speed. It cannot break the speed without the risk of structural failure of the aircraft. So at 70,000 feet for the U-2, those two critical speeds, the too slow and the too fast, are dangerously close to each other. We're talking a window of just 5 or 10 knots. This tiny gap is the coffin's corner. If you go too slow, you stall, and the air is too thin, recovery is just a nightmare. You go too fast, and the plane could literally be torn apart. Even something as simple as a turn can become quite the balancing act. As you turn, the inside wing starts to slow down, risking a stall, and the outside wing speeds up, risking disaster. So pilots have to fly with near superhuman precision for hours on end. Gogo explains to us what it's like to fly at those altitudes.
It is absolutely surreal. So you can start to see the curvature of the Earth up there. The sky is a dark blue. If you're ever flying at sunset, you can physically see the line of when it turns from night to day. And we call that the Terminator. And that's one of the coolest aviation views I've seen in my entire life.
As we talked about the air being thinner the further up you go You have to think about survival at 70,000 feet. And that takes not just a special plane, it takes a special pilot sealed inside what's basically a custom-fitted spacesuit.
We have to fly in a full pressure suit. The reason for that is above the Armstrong line, which is about 52,000 feet, water will boil at room temperature. So that would be really bad if your blood boiled. It would be instantaneous death. The suit is there as a backup. The cabin is pressurized. But if it were to lose pressure, or heaven forbid we ever had to eject, we need that suit there as the measure of safety.
So the same features that make the U-2 a high-altitude champion and like Dancing with the Lady make it a monster to land, or the Dragon.
It's called the Dragon Lady for a reason. At altitude where the air is really thin, it's like Dancing with a Lady. But when we're down at lower altitudes where the air is a lot more dense, it's like taming a dragon. And that's due to a few things. So one of those being the fact that none of our flight controls are assisted by hydraulics. So it's like driving a car without power steering. And that they're pretty big flight control surfaces. So the control forces are very heavy. The other thing is that we land in a bicycle configuration.
Those massive glider-like wings are so efficient that even with the engine at idle, the plane just doesn't want to land. So as the aircraft gets closer to the runway, it hits ground effect, which is a cushion of air between the wing and the ground that creates even more lift, causing the plane to float stubbornly just above the runway. Now, because of the long nose and the restrictive helmet, the pilot can barely see the runway as it is. So to do this, they typically will have a chase car that will assist them in landing. That chase car is another U-2 pilot that's driving a high-performance vehicle, speeding down the runway right behind the landing U-2 at over 100 miles an hour, all while still giving instructions to assist with landing.
Nice job, welcome back.
It's really an incredible display of teamwork and trust that's been essential to U-2 operations from day one. The level of difficulty is something very few people will ever experience, but understanding these challenges gives you a whole new appreciation for the skill that it takes. If you find this look into elite aviation fascinating, make sure that you subscribe, hit the notification bell, and we will explore the world's most incredible machines and the people who master them every week. So how does one even get the chance to wrestle with the Dragon Lady? Well, the path is one of the most exclusive in the military, and it's not just reserved for the Air Force. For decades, only highly experienced pilots from other jets, fighters, and bombers with thousands of hours of flight experience were even considered. The program did, however, recently start looking at younger pilots, but the selection process is still an absolute meat grinder. The ones who make the first cut get an invitation to Beale Air Force Base for a tough 2 week of interviews. And this isn't just talking, it's an intense evaluation of their flying skills, professionalism, and mental toughness. The final exam is a series of 3 flights in the training version of the U-2 that is 2 seats. The U-2 has a knack of finding any weakness in a pilot's fundamentals. There's no faking it here. You either have the delicate touch and the instinct for the aircraft or you don't. So once they're in, the pilots go through months of intense training. They'll master the U-2, they'll fly the T-38 Talon to stay sharp, spend countless of hours in simulators, practice landing after landing, and they'll endure altitude chamber sessions to get their bodies ready for missions. The result is a tiny, tight-knit community of aviators, all bound by the shared experience of mastering one of the most challenging machines ever built. So in an age of satellites and advanced drones, you might ask yourself why a plane designed in the 50s is still flying critical missions. Well, the Air Force does plan to start retiring the fleet around 2026, but for now, the Dragon Lady remains a vital tool. So the reason it's stuck around for so long is its incredible flexibility. A satellite's orbit is predictable and locked. A U-2 can be sent anywhere in the world and can hang out over a target for hours, providing constant streams of information. And while the airframe might be old, the tech inside is cutting edge. They continue to update sensors, and they carry a huge variety of advanced cameras, signal intelligence gear, and data link systems. This lets it serve as a critical communications hub in the sky, connecting forces on the ground, in the air, and even in space. So while its days might be numbered, the U-2's legacy is etched in aviation history. It's a story of bold, Cold War spycraft, brilliant engineering, and constant reinvention. But more than anything, it's a tribute to the incredible skill, dedication, and courage of the tiny fraternity of pilots who earned the right to fly it. They're the only ones who truly tamed the Dragon Lady, flying her at the edge of space to keep watch over a world that rarely even knew it was there. At AirVenture 2025, I am joined by Gogo, one of the it's a U-2. One of the U-2 pilots who has been at AirVenture this week, sharing their aircraft and talking with the crowd. So thank you so much for taking some time to talk with us.
I'm happy to be here. The pleasure is all mine.
So as we get going here, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm, like you said, I'm with the U-2 program. I've been with it since 2017. I've been in the Air Force for about 16 years now. I am originally from Fond du Lac, so just a short drive away from Oshkosh. Joined the Air Force in 2009, went through ROTC at the University of Wisconsin, pilot training in Columbus, Mississippi. I've flown as an instructor in the T6, as well as the EC-130H Compass Call, and then I moved on to the U-2s.
Okay, so you had some other experience in the Air Force with other types of aircraft before moving into the U-2.
That's affirmative. Everyone who flies the U-2 has flown another aircraft.
Okay.
There's a hour requirement that changes based on which airframe you came from, but it's around 1,000 hours.
Okay. So growing up around the area, did you get into flying in your youth, or was it after you got into the Air Force?
I never got to fly. My mother was very petrified of general aviation.
Okay.
I won't get into that. But so I actually had to come to EAA with my neighbor.
Okay.
Because he was a private pilot. So I didn't end up taking my first flight until I got to go take a trip on an airliner when I was 16.
Okay.
So everything was just viewed from the ground with wide eyes. And
Yeah, I
then
bet.
I eventually got to take a couple flights and go through the military.
Okay. So when you went through the military route, as far as being selected for pilot training, because they don't just hand that out to anybody.
That is correct.
What was that process like for you?
So the way it is supposed to go, normally if you go through ROTC the way I did, that you will go through ROTC in the 4 years that you go to college, and then you will get an assignment your third year.
Okay.
Now, I was, everyone takes their own journey, right? I said that. So I didn't actually join ROTC for a completely separate reason until my fourth year of college, fourth of five, because
Okay.
I went into engineering, so 5 years is not uncommon. So I only did ROTC for 2 years, and I didn't get my assignment until, I got it 1 year in. So I actually didn't get a pilot slot right away. I was supposed to go to combat systems officer training, and I was about a month and a half from graduation, and then I got pulled into the commander's office, and he said, hey, they had more fallout than usual at the medical process, so how would you like to be a pilot? And then I jumped up and down, did a little dance,
I bet you did.
And it all worked out. And after that, I went, like I said, to Columbus Air Force Base. And yeah, that process took about 13 months of training.
Okay, sure. So what is it like for you to come back to Wisconsin and showcase this aircraft?
It is an absolute dream come true. I can tell you, when I was flying, as soon as I saw Whitman for the first time, it became real. And I've never had butterflies in my stomach while flying like that. It was absolutely awe-inspiring, followed immediately by the realization that this would be my most viewed landing, and I better not screw it up.
Did they give you a dot to land on too?
They did not tell me to land on a dot. They gave me the benefit of that doubt.
Okay.
But they did view me from above, and I'm happy to say I landed right on center line.
Way.
So that was good.
So let's talk a little bit about the U-2 itself. What can you tell us about the aircraft and some of the unique characteristics?
Well, the U-2 is the Air Force's premier high-altitude reconnaissance aircraft, and it's been around since the 1950s. Its first flight was the August 1st, 1955. So I should say the program has been around since the 1950s. The entire fleet has been redesigned, upgraded, re-engined, re-avionics, they upgraded sensors, and all of the airframes right now, with the exception of 3, were built in the 1980s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, additionally, it's about 30% larger than the original U-2. That was necessitated because of new sensors requiring more power.
Okay.
More power requires a bigger generator, and that
Sure.
didn't fit in the original fuselage. So they needed a bigger fuselage, and when you need a bigger fuselage, you need a whole bigger plane to go
Yeah,
with
you
it.
sure do.
Yeah. So
I suppose that increased the wingspan a bit too.
Yep, increase the wingspan. Right now we're at about 104-foot wingspan.
Okay. What are some of the characteristics that you can share of the aircraft as far as some of the specs, as far as speeds and altitudes you guys can fly?
Yeah.
And I get if you can't share some of it.
Altitude is 70+ thousand feet.
Wow.
Yep. The cruising, our max cruising speed is 475 miles per hour. Now, note that's miles per hour, so you can convert it to knots, and you can realize that's a ground speed. So if you do some mental calculations on what your indicated would be at 70,000 plus, significantly lower than that indicated.
Okay.
Yep. But we can fly for 14 hours.
Okay.
And
what can you tell me about the mission itself?
so the mission itself, like I said, high altitude reconnaissance. And it started out as just taking pictures. And it was a wet film camera, which meant we had to fly directly over whatever it was we wanted to take pictures of.
Okay.
That ultimately resulted in Francis Gary Powers getting shot down, and we realized that, hey, maybe we shouldn't be flying this over countries that have really good integrated air defenses. So now we have many different sensors. We're multi-int is what we call it. So we can still do imagery, we can do signals, we can host quick reaction capabilities. So if you're a 3-letter agency and you've got this really cool widget that you want to fly, we can probably test it, get it approved, and get it to the commanders in a pretty short order.
Okay.
Yep. But those sensors, now we can look sideways a pretty long distance, so we don't have to overfly it. We can fly in international airspace or over countries that want us to be there so that we can look at their neighbors. And we're pretty much playing the international high-stakes game of I'm not touching you, just the way you did in the car back on road trips.
Yeah. So to fly this aircraft, you're not wearing your regular flight suit like you're wearing right now, right?
That is correct. We can wear it if we're just doing touch and goes and staying low. But anytime we fly high, we have to fly in a full pressure suit.
Okay.
The reason for that is above the Armstrong line, which is about 52,000 feet, water will boil at room temperature. So that would be really bad if your blood boiled. It would be instantaneous death. So the suit is there as a backup. The cabin is pressurized, but if it were to lose pressure, or heaven forbid we ever had to eject, we need that suit there as the measure of safety.
Okay. What is it like to fly that high?
It is absolutely surreal. So you can start to see the curvature of the Earth up there. The sky is a dark blue. If you're ever flying at sunset, you can physically see the line of when it turns from night to day, and we call that the Terminator, and that's one of the coolest aviation views I've seen in my entire life. As far as how the aircraft handles, it's called the Dragon Lady for a reason. At altitude, where the air is really thin, it's like dancing with a lady. But when we're down at lower altitudes, where the air is a lot more dense, it's like taming a dragon, and that's due to a few things. So one of those being the fact that none of our flight controls are assisted by hydraulics. So it's like driving a car without power steering.
Oh, no.
Yep, and they're pretty big flight control surfaces. So the control forces are very heavy. The other thing is that we land in a bicycle configuration. We've got pogos, which are just auxiliary wheels. Those are on the wings. Those fall out as soon as we take off. So when we land in a bicycle configuration, and we actually tip onto the wingtips when the wings stop producing lift, which is usually around 15 to 20 knots.
Okay.
And we come to a full stop, and the maintenance crew puts those pogos in. But yeah, landing in the bicycle configuration is a little bit tricky. And then finally, the aircraft is so slippery, and it's got so much power, it just doesn't want to land. So we pretty much have to bring it to a full stall at 2 feet above the runway.
Okay.
And that can be tricky because if you're a little bit too high and you stall, well, you're going to fall and break things.
Yeah.
And if you're too low, you run the risk of bouncing and getting to that high place where, again, you're going to break things. So we don't want to do that.
Now, how do you train for that? Because that's not a normal type of flying.
that is true. And I should say, I've made it sound really scary. It is still an airplane. And when you fly in the parameters that they give you, it lands the way you expect.
Okay.
It's just got a shorter margin or a thinner margin of error, and it'll bite you if you're out of tolerance.
Sure.
But as far as training, to get back to your question, the training is a long process. So it starts with, as we've mentioned, you have to have your hours requirement. At that point, you can put in an application. If your application is accepted, you can come out for some interviews. You'll interview with squadron and group leadership. And if you make it past that, then you get up to 3 interview flights. And that's in the 2-seater. We've got a handful of 2-seaters just for training. And you'll fly with some of the most experienced instructor pilots we have. They have to go through their own qual just to do those flights specifically.
Okay.
So we give the interviewees a very condensed syllabus. They have to learn how to fly a normal pattern, a no-flap pattern, and a simulated flame-out. And as long as they show that they are progressing each flight and then they can accept instruction, then they will get offered a job.
Okay.
Then they can move out to Beale Air Force Base, and they will get upgraded, or not upgraded, they'll get qualified in the T-38 first, and then they'll move on to the U-2, where they'll first go through basic qual, and then after they learn how to fly the jet, they'll learn the mission, and they'll focus only on flying single seat for missions. The whole process from start of T-38 training through certification and you're ready to go fly missions takes about 9 months.
Okay.
Yep. But it's a long, drawn-out process, and there's many steps along the way. But if you get through it, man, the reward is absolutely fantastic.
So that selection process, I got to imagine, is grueling in and of itself, is it not?
Yes. The number of people that get through, it's roughly 2/3 of the people who apply get interviews.
Okay.
And roughly 2/3 of the people who get interviewed eventually get hired. So it ends up being about a 40% of the original applicants will actually get picked up. And that changes based on year and who wants to fly it and, things like that. There's no quota that we meet. It's not that we say, oh, we've got enough for the year, you're gone, or at least we did in the past. It's pretty much, if we invite you out, we have a spot for you. So if you make the cut, we will hire you.
Okay. So in that process, from the actual time that you apply until selection and through training, is that the 9 months or is just training 9 months?
Just training.
Okay.
Yeah, so you get some people that can't move out right away due to a number of reasons. You know, the Air Force gets its say in when you get to move.
Right.
The big hand of the Air Force. They ultimately always get the final vote.
Yep. Of the pilots that are selected, is it like a mix of fighter, cargo, bomber pilots, or is it preference one or the other?
It is definitely a mix of everything. We have had pilots who've flown every type of aircraft, and we've also had them from different services as well.
Oh, okay.
It changes, it goes in ebbs and flows as far as which pilots the Air Force are allowing to fly, because they'll say, hey, we need lots of fighter pilots, we've got a shortage, or hey, we don't need inter-service transfers right now, things like that. But we have had absolutely everybody, and we'll take anybody that the Air Force allows to come interview.
So when you say inter-service transfer, does that mean that they're actually becoming a member of the Air Force then? Or
Absolutely.
Are they still
okay. Yep. They leave whatever service they were in and they come to fly for us.
Okay. I didn't know that was a thing.
It certainly is, yep.
Okay. We talked a little bit about landing, but can you talk to me a little bit more about that process? Because I'm sure some of our listeners have seen videos on YouTube or wherever of, like, you've got a chase car and all that. So can you talk to us about what that looks like? Absolutely.
So we kind of talked about the physics of landing a little bit, but I'll talk a little bit more what goes into it. So the controls, like we said, they're heavy. They're a little bit sluggish. So anytime you make an input, you immediately have to take it out to see what type of effect it had. So if you get to see the cockpit view of flying, there is all sorts of movement going on, and it's pretty funny to see, because you're like, you're doing a lot of things, but the aircraft isn't moving. So if you left those inputs in, you'd have a bad time. But while we are doing all that, we are getting chased by the mobile officer. So the mobile officer, specifically on landing, is going to be calling out how high above the ground the main gear are.
Okay.
And then they can also call out landing anomalies. So like, hey, right rudder or left rudder,
Okay.
let it down, hold it off, those types of things. And they are all qualified U-2 pilots.
Okay.
And we treat them as co-pilots on the ground. So they will set up the cockpit for the mission pilot that day. They will monitor weather, monitor NOTAMs, coordinate with airfield.
Okay.
Yeah, they're doing all the things that the pilot can't do because they could be thousands of miles away, and they have to be focused on the mission instead of, what's the weather back home. There is a trust that, hey, if home station isn't talking to me, it's probably going to be fine for me to come back to when I get done with my mission. And if that's not the case, then they need to reach out to the pilot and either get them prepared to divert or get them to come back early, whatever they need to do. Just keep them updated.
That is a really interesting dynamic that I wasn't aware of, that you've got that other person on the ground doing that extra work for you.
Absolutely. So while we fly single seat, alone, unafraid, we are never truly alone. We've got data links so that we can talk to huge crews all over the world because there are multiple people who control our sensors.
Okay.
We have some ability in the cockpit to control them, but as far as where they're pointed and how we change where that or what we're looking at, that's all controlled from somewhere else.
Okay.
And yeah, it truly takes a village to not just get us to take off, but to complete the mission and provide the intelligence to the senior leaders.
Sure.
To make the decisions they need to make at the strategic level.
Okay. So you talk about the crews that you have on the ground, the maintenance personnel that are part of that as well. Do they have a rigorous selection process as well to get onto this, or is it like a first aircraft for them or not?
So there's no selection process for them.
Okay.
Some people come here straight away. Some people come here after other ones. We get a lot of fighter crew chiefs that come here, but some of the the back shops, electronics, and things like that, they can come from all over. But
Okay.
we get a lot of fighter maintainers, at least on the crew chief side.
Do you have a most memorable moment of your flying?
Landing at Oshkosh.
Okay.
But other than that, it's not necessarily a most memorable mission as much as views and sometimes some radio calls of when I've been transferring a tail from Beale over to one of the FOLs going over the seas, and you check in at 600, and then you get other pilots saying, "What's that? Who's up there?" So that's kind of a cool thing. And then, when I came to Oshkosh and I got on the ground, we actually squawked Mode S, and we had some people come up to me and show me screenshots and said, there were 7,000 people watching you.
I bet there was.
And I was just absolutely awestruck. So, moments like that just make you realize this is amazing, and I can't believe I get to do what I do.
Yeah. Is it better that you found out probably when you're on the ground that there were 70,000 people watching you?
Most likely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Your Air Force journey itself. I'm going to wait for a second. Some of your peers are being a little noisy.
We'll do that.
So you said you've been in for 16 years. You've flown a couple of different airframes. Do you have a favorite?
The U-2.
Okay.
It's where I've wanted to be and where I want to be until they won't let me anymore.
Okay. And then your Air Force experience, any pros or cons that you would want to share with like any potential listener who might be looking at going into a career in the Air Force?
Sure, yeah. The Air Force is obviously not for everybody, but that being said, if you want to get into aviation and you want an experience unlike any other, whether it's the U-2 or any other type of aircraft, the Air Force provides fantastic opportunities. Now, there's obviously some sacrifices you have to make in order to do that, but the training, experiences, and sense of self-worth that they give you truly cannot be matched other places. And, that's obviously not for everyone. So even if you want to go all the civilian route, what I would say is, if you want to do the whole pilot thing as a career, find a way. Just do it. And don't let people tell you no. I know that sounds cliche, but, all of us at one point or another, we've had various people tell you all the reasons why you can't do it.
Yeah.
And just don't accept that and find a way to chase your dreams.
That's a great answer.
Yeah.
Getting close to the end of the questions I have in my head here. Do you have anything else that you want to add that we haven't covered that might be interesting for people to know?
The biggest thing that I just want to express gratitude in that I was able to be here. EAA has welcomed us with open arms. All the spectators came here. We had people who said, I traveled here from Brazil just to see the U-2.
Oh, wow.
So I just want to say thank you to everyone who helped make this happen, whether it's EAA, whether it's spectators that came here from all over the world, or whether it's the Air Force for allowing us to do that. Just thank you from the bottom of my heart. This has been a bucket list of mine. I came to EAA as a child growing up 20 minutes south in Fond du Lac, and I always wanted to bring my own airplane. Never did I think my own airplane. I guess technically I still haven't brought my own airplane, but, kind of
I think that's close.
Yes, exactly. So this has been a bucket list item, and I'm just so incredibly fortunate and grateful.
A question that is often popular with pilots, and you can tell me to pound sand if you want, is the story behind a call sign.
Oh, yeah.
If you're able. If you're not, I get it. But
yeah, I can. The big picture is I was a little bit conservative. I didn't think I was going to have enough gas to come back from a mission. And I had as much as I thought I was going to. I was just going to be below divert fuel, but it was clear in a million at my landing base, and there were 2 runways open. So when I got back, all the pilots gave me no end of the grief. Yep. So basically, they just called me a big chicken for coming back early and cutting an hour off my mission.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I cannot thank you enough for your time. I really appreciate you, especially a day that you guys are probably getting ready to start packing things up and getting out of here. And
yeah, they've actually towed the aircraft to the other side of the runway, and now I've got to figure out exactly where they can put us because we have a 180-foot turning radius, so we can't make a whole lot of the turns on this airfield. So there's been no end to the phone calls as far as, hey, where are we going to go? And they don't want you there. So we'll get to do that here this afternoon.
All right. Well, I appreciate the time, and enjoy your trip back, as bittersweet as it may be. But thanks again so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks so much to Gogo and the folks over with the U-2 program for being a part of this interview. Really appreciated them taking the time on the very last day of AirVenture to sit down and chat with me all about their program and about themselves. I thought it was really cool that Gogo is from like 20 minutes from Oshkosh, and he talks about getting to fly his own plane there, and then it just happens to be his first time flying in is in an Air Force U-2, and he is the highlight of the show at that point. So I mean, just a really cool homecoming event for him to be able to fly in like that. Another thing I think is really interesting about the U-2 is he talks about not flying over, these potentially hostile countries, and instead they fly over international airspace or countries that want them there. And the technology and the sensors are such now that they're able to really, quote unquote, reach out and touch someone with their capabilities so that they don't even have to fly over this hostile airspace anymore. So hopefully you prevent another Gary Powers incident in the future. All around, really, really cool aircraft, really great people. And again, it was just such a pleasure to sit down and chat with Gogo. All right, you know what time it is now. It's time for me to beg and plead for you to leave ratings and reviews for this podcast. So if you could be so kind, go to whatever podcast player you're listening to this on. Go to that area that shows you the show. There should be a place you can put 5-star rating, write a review. It really helps to grow the podcast, and it is really cool to hear from you, the listeners. And don't forget that once this check ride's complete, I'm going to start making more content. So if you have an idea for a future episode, you or someone you know will be a great guest, please reach out to me at jim@flyingmidwest.com or on any of my social medias, which are handle at @aero_exploration. And finally, if you liked the little clip at the very beginning of this where it was from the YouTube video, I will post a link to that down in the description so you can see all the visuals that went along with putting that video together. Well, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to listen to this episode. This is Aero Exploration, and we'll see you next time.